Hey everybody, welcome back to the RC Air Experience. We are at episode 9 for our podcast series. I'm Jonathan from the lighter side of RC, and we've got Anthony from FPV Builds. Welcome.
What's going on, buddy? Been a couple weeks.
It's been a couple weeks, having a great time. If you guys saw the intro, if you liked the intro, comment down below what you thought about the intro. If you hated the intro, I guess let us know as well too. I thought it was great when I saw it, but you never know what other people think of it. So
yeah, so we created that, and I don't know why YouTube Shorts messes with me sometimes, but like I don't know. Do you have this problem with Shorts? Because like if it's 60 seconds, it won't take it, right?
Yeah.
If it's 59 seconds, it may or may not take it. Like that video is the proper format, everything. It's 59 seconds. I tried it at 60, it didn't work. Went to 59, it didn't work. And when I uploaded it, I thought it was going to be a short. So that was made to be a short for advertisement for the podcast, for Instagram, for TikTok. But it's not a short right now. It's on YouTube. So I have to fix that. That's definitely something. But
well, there's no choice, right? Like I found that too. I use whatever that program is that does them automatically, so I don't even have to do anything with them. It just creates them for me.
Right.
And right. So I just set it to 60 seconds or less or whatever the settings are. But yeah, there's no choice. When you upload it to YouTube, it either recognizes it as a short or a long format video. So
it's crazy though, by their own rules, 60 seconds or less.
Yeah.
But it's 59 seconds and it's not a short. And it's the right format. I was looking at the pixel size. I'm like, is this the right format? It happens to me all the time with YouTube Shorts. It's crazy. But yeah, it's cool. We're going to be creating some other shorts and stuff like that using Opus.
Yeah, that's what it is. Opus clips. Yes.
Yeah. We want to get the podcast out. And get more people, following it, and it's not just for me and Jonathan; it's for the community. I think the community will enjoy what we're doing.
Yeah, I've had a lot of good feedback already from lots of people. I mean, I think you read more of the comments and stuff than I do, but a lot of people that email me that are regular viewers of my normal channel, a lot of them are saying they like the podcast and they love the format and the people we've had on already, and just you and I talking and. So yeah, it's been a good experience so far. I've enjoyed it.
Speaking of which, we're going to be doing this for a couple of episodes. Until we get some more guests and stuff, which I think is fine. I think me and you doing it for a couple of episodes will be good. We'll build our relationship with our audience, and then when people want to come on, we'll make some space for guests.
Yeah, I think just doing it, period. Regardless of guest or not, is the important part, right? So
absolutely. It's funny you mentioned the comments. I got a little frustrated at one of the comments the other day, and I didn't fire back like mean because that's not me. But it was like, FPV guys are the Antichrist, and Jonathan, how dare you associate yourself with that crowd of those misfits of the hobby? And I was like, I take offense to that. We've tried, I don't know if a lot of people know this or not, but one of the companies that was really against remote ID, and I've tried to get him on the podcast, and he said, he would come on down the road. He's Tyler Brennan from Race Day Quads.
Okay.
And he's actually a fighter pilot. His story is amazing.
Cool.
He's an actual Air Force fighter pilot, and he owns one of the larger FPV companies. On the side. But he, with a couple of the other stores and some community funding, he took the FAA to court over remote ID laws because they thought it was going to hurt FPV, and we don't know what's going to happen with it or not. But
I think people. I'm just going to interrupt here. I think people miss the fact that there is so much overlap with what we do. So, you and I are both the extremes of this hobby. But there are so many, when you start to get into the professional side of things, we'll just call it the drone world, whether it's military use or whatever, there is so much overlap
So much.
with FPV and that technology and turbines and all that stuff. So, you know, whether you think it's appropriate or not, it's happening. So
Right. And it's funny that you talk about that, because there's actually a company that is kind of doing what Flight Test is doing. It's an Australian company, and they're making basically foam board RC airplane kits for military use.
wow.
I forgot what the name of them are, but they're an Australian military company, and the premise is Ukraine showed us a lot, right? That whole war that's going on showed us what drones, everyday, regular, off-the-shelf consumer drones can do. And the idea is this company is using foam board templates and giving them to military units, and they can tape them together real quick, slap this power pod that they have together, and boom, now you have a UAV for surveillance, bomb dropping, whatever it is. So it's kind of crazy. The overlap is there for real.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I like everything RC aviation. I've been an RC nut in total since I was a kid. That's just, I've always loved RC. So for me, it's, I like the hobby. It's
for sure. Whether it's cars or planes or whatever. Right?
I had to fire back, so I fired back. It wasn't mean, but I was just like, it's not fair. That wasn't fair.
I would have had your back if I would have saw the comments. So
yeah, I appreciate that. I do. So we don't have much going on. We did a little sampling of the community about favorite planes and stuff like that. We'll dive into that a little bit.
Cool.
I had texted you a couple of things that I wanted to talk about, and I actually think this would be great for people who don't fly turbines too. So we'll start with that. Sure. How do you? One of the issues I have now flying line of sight, because I've gotten so used to being inside the plane, is I lose orientation really easily.
Yeah.
Now, taking that to the next extreme, you guys are flying things that are super fast. They disappear in a blink of an eye, right? How do you? I've seen some of your videos, and the things like the camera's like zooming in to catch it in the sky. How do you keep orientation? Like, I feel like it's scary. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you sent me that question earlier today, and I've been thinking about it all day. And what it actually brought me back to was my first EDF plane or jet, if you want to call it that, I guess. So when if you know my past, I mean, people that have watched the podcast and stuff before know this, but I started off with helicopters, got into fixed wing for a very short period of time before I made the jump into turbine powered aircraft. And one of the planes that I got was, you may remember this one. It was the old Habu kit. It was the black and red Habu. And it was a 90 millimeter ducted fan. The kit was like wood, I think, with maybe a fiberglass fuselage or whatever it was.
Yep.
So I bought that, put it together, and I think I flew it about 6 times. But I remember at this stage, I was like just flying a foam airplane. So when I first flew that, it was leaps and bounds more experienced than I actually was. But I remember the field that I was flying at, it got away from me real quick. Right. And I was flying, I think I was by myself, and it ended up, so I think I took it off. I don't remember how many circuits I did, but I ended up way far out there, so far out there that I could barely see the dang thing anymore. And I remember it just being like throttling up and like not knowing which way it was up on the thing. And I ended up saving it actually, which was amazing. Yeah. But what that made me think about was just experience. I think a lot of it comes from experience. So that's the number one thing that I think happens. Another story that kind of ties into this goes back when I was flying my F-18, and this was, I guess, about 5 years ago now. So we were at an event 3 hours north, which is at a full-scale runway, and it was like the Friday or the Saturday of the event. We woke up, the ceiling was really low, like really low. You know, the clouds where you can look up and they're
right.
there.
Right.
And I remember I was like, I'm going to fly my F-18. This is fine. and it was a gray F-18, like full gray. And I remember flying the thing, and it was awesome. I mean, I love that plane so much. And I ended up at one point pulling up and going right into the clouds, like it was gone, the ceiling, right, gone.
Right.
But just from experience, you know what it feels like, right? So I knew I was going straight up, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to pull back. I know I'm going to come over, with this amount of feel, whatever it was, and I just pulled back in what I figured was going to be my loop, and just rode it out, and it came out of the clouds like I was doing a loop in the ceiling or in the clouds.
Wow.
So that came from years of experience flying.
Right.
And so I think that's probably the biggest thing with it. But what I also find myself too is sometimes our flight window or box, if you want to call it, expands and expands and expands, and it just gets bigger and bigger. And I always try and tighten that box up, because I find like I'll start the year flying, I'm keeping it, fairly close. And then I find myself after a few months of flying, that box is getting bigger. And if I go to a field where you've got a really long runway, that tends to make that box bigger as well.
Right.
So I find mentally I have to think about bringing that box tighter. But also if I fly a prop plane or a smaller plane and naturally bring that box in tight, then when I fly the big planes, that box is so much tighter. So
yeah, I get what
those
you're
are
saying.
those are some of the things that I do.
I could see that getting you in trouble. I understand what you're saying. So, like, you get used to flying on these bigger runways, bigger fields,
Yeah.
right? If I'm understanding you right. And then all of a sudden, if you're at an event or something and it's a smaller field, now all of a sudden you have to. Yeah, I see that. I understand what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the other thing people have a problem with is they start going with bigger planes, and their perspective of the plane in the sky, let's say, is this big. I'm just, we're just saying this big. So when you're flying a smaller plane, you're going to keep that plane closer because you're used to it being this big. And then you get in there and you fly a 12-foot, 15-foot long plane. Well, you're still used to it being this big. So now you're flying 5 times the distance away from you.
Right.
And the plane looks the same, right? So last year we had an issue. I was buddy boxing with a friend, and we were flying his A-10, and he was flying it. He was doing a good job, and he was doing the turnaround to our left, which was to the west, and it was way out there. And I told him, I'm like, you need to start bringing it back, right? And he made his turn, but he was so far out, and the wind ended up catching his wing on the turn and actually inverted his plane. And I just, without saying anything, I just took over and corrected and stuff. But it was a pretty sketchy moment, right? But the thing is, the plane was 4 times further out than I was comfortable flying it.
Right.
Like it was way out there, right? So then that just comes with flying huge planes. You have to be mindful of that too.
So this all came about. I stumbled across a video on my feed the other day. And it's a tiny little like triangle plane with a pulse jet motor on it. It was like the fastest jet. I'm sure you've seen this video.
Yeah.
And the thing's, and I'm like, how the hell is he keeping track of this thing? Like flying, like it's baffling to me because the thing's just blink and the thing's by, and he just goes up through the clouds, comes back around. And I'm like, how is he tracking this thing? It's all one color. Right? Like, how do you know what is up, down? Like, I don't understand. And that's where this whole thing came from. I'm like, it's got to be exponentially harder with a faster turbine than it is with like a regular little foam plane. Like, it's just so fast, right?
Yeah, you do get used to it though. Yeah, you get used to it. One of the things that before we had our height restriction, one of the things I used to love doing with my fast plane, it's a Carf Ultra Flash, which is a great plane. I used to just do a full speed pass, pull up, and keep going straight up because they're usually overpowered, so you could essentially keep going indefinitely. Right. But keep going until the thing is so small you can't even see it. And I'm doing, you're going up and you're rolling the thing over. Right. And it's, you're so high up, it doesn't really matter because you can just let it fall and you could eventually correct, right? But that used to be one of my fun things to do, and we can't do that anymore. But I love doing that, and it comes from experience, being more comfortable with it.
Now, do you typically fly? I see a lot of people flying with like sunglasses. Do you typically fly with sunglasses? Does that help? Does the sunglasses help you with orientation or keeping track with it?
Yeah, I always, I mean, 99% of the time I fly sunglasses, unless it's a really cloudy, overcast day. I still have my sunglasses on.
Okay.
Um, I don't use any of the yellow lenses or anything. I basically use the Oakley lenses. I can't remember the name of them, but they've got a specific lens that brightens everything up,
Okay.
and that's the lens that I use. So
Yeah. Yeah. It was just very like one of those aha moments to me when I saw that video, because I was just like, I couldn't. That
well,
thing
and
would be gone.
that thing is so fast. When you watch that video, it's just mental how
It's
quickly it's
crazy.
moving. Yeah,
It is crazy, and it's like, how do you find that line of sight? Like
yeah,
those pulse jet planes are pretty cool.
yeah.
They seem like they're loud as hell too, though. They just seem like
Yeah, for sure. Basically, I think the one that I've seen in the past too, he's flying it on a fuel bag over in Europe, and basically flying it, runs out of fuel, and then he comes in, and it doesn't have
yeah,
any landing gear or anything, right? It just
no landing
belly
gear.
lands, and yeah.
Yep,
So
yep. It's a wild little plane. It's
yeah,
crazy. And so I like, you have lights and stuff, right? So you can have nav lights where one tip is green or red
yeah,
or whatever. That might make it a little bit easier. That plane's got nothing on it. It's a tiny little Dorito.
yeah,
Like it's amazing. Some people are really talented though.
yeah,
I watched that. I watched some of the 3D heli guys do all their little maneuvers where they're doing 3,000 flips and bringing this thing almost off the ground, and I'm like, how are you doing this right now? Like, how do you
and
not?
they're also flying 5 feet in front of their face.
Right, right.
So
It's wild. It
yeah,
really is. Yeah. Speaking of helis, I told you I was starting to get the bug a little bit, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So I was at a swap meet not too long ago. I think we talked about the swap meet, but yeah, I was at a swap meet, and I had one of my planes with me, and I had a bunch of my planes with me, and I saw a helicopter. It had like a Huey body. And I was like, I forgot what he was asking for. I was like, come by my table if you want to do a trade, if you're looking to get a plane or something. I have a couple more swap meets coming up. I need a helicopter like I need a hole in the head.
yeah.
But I think it'd be really cool to put an FPV setup in one.
I was just going to ask you if you'd put an FPV setup
Oh,
in there.
absolutely.
So.
Absolutely.
Really?
So I can fly. It's funny. I can actually fly my quadcopters better line of sight than I could fly a plane better line of sight. So I'm flying a quadcopter is very similar to flying a helicopter, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wouldn't have a problem flying at line of sight. It might be harder to fly a helicopter with FPV because, I think some of the helicopters, I'm not 100% sure, but you have to kind of give them a little bit of throttle up, like before you can just take off. They have to spin up a little bit. As to where like a quadcopter, you could just punch the thing and it's instantly, up in the air. It's gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, with helis, I mean, this is from my past experience. I know things have changed a little bit, but like with my current heli that I have, my electric Goblin 570, like basically it's on a governor, right? So when you go to idle up mode, I guess it's called, or it used to be called, basically it's spinning at, I don't know what the number is, like, I don't even know what it is. Let's say 2000 RPM, spinning at 2000 RPM, and it's always trying to keep it at 2000 RPM, and it's just adjusting your pitch, right?
Gotcha.
So versus having a throttle curve or a throttle/pitch curve. So
yeah, I got to learn some helicopter stuff. I've been looking at like, because I'm part maker as well. I do 3D printing and stuff like that. So I've also been like, freaking helicopters are so expensive. Like even for like the small ones, like used, that helicopter was like $500. I'm like, that's more than I want to spend. I'd rather trade out for that.
yeah,
And some of the new, like, I mean, some of them are $800 or $1,000. They're expensive, and they're fragile. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
very.
I was looking at like kits because you need the assembly that does the tilting and stuff of the blades,
Yeah.
right? So like you can't just strap a motor to a big spinning blade and a rear blade. Like there's got to be a mechanism. So I was like, maybe somebody sells a mechanism that you could build your own frame or helicopter around. I didn't really have a lot of luck looking into that. Yeah, I'm
I
just
think it
gonna
might be one of those things that's better just to buy.
right, right, right.
There's
Is it-
a lot of spinning dangerous things there. So
right, but I mean, I could literally. I've seen people do this in like poorer third world countries where they take like
yeah.
2x4s and make drones out of them, right? Like
Well, yeah, of course.
it's like so can't do that with a helicopter though. That's not possible.
No, there's lots of different mechanisms happening there.
Yeah,
Quadcopter a little easier, right? Four motors that spin at
so
different
easy,
rates.
so
So
easy. Yeah,
so did you end up getting the helicopter?
I didn't. He didn't. He
No.
didn't want a wheel and deal. And
I see.
my current situation, everything's like inventory now, right? So I
Yeah.
can't justify just bringing something home without
Yeah,
making some sort of deal. That's just.
for sure.
I think that my wife hasn't divorced me yet, and she didn't divorce me when we had like 4 pallets of planes in front of the house, because that was close. Um, I think that would probably be it. I think at that point, she
Well, I'll tell you my new acquisition. It hasn't it's not official yet, but I unboxed that BDX a couple weeks ago,
figured.
and I actually held back for a week, and then I emailed Elite Aerosports and I said, "Hey guys," I said, unboxing this BDX did it for me. Let's get this ball rolling." So
Wow.
yeah, I sent them a couple schemes that I liked, sent them my logo for the colors and stuff, and just waiting to hear back from them on what they come up with or what their designer comes up with. So, yeah.
So they'll make a scheme specific to whatever you want for the most part?
Yeah, if you wanted to take, like they've got a Dropbox that you can get from them where they've got all the schemes they've ever done in that plane and
Right.
ones they've created. And then the blank template. So you could actually draw up any scheme you wanted and give it to them. I picked one that I've actually been eyeing for about a year. Just the layout of it is really nice, but it's like red, yellow, and gray.
Okay.
So it's a pretty easy swap if you took the red and swapped it to pink or I don't know, whatever color my logo is. It's got a special color, but yeah, I think that would be a cool layout for it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see what they come up with. But yeah, so that's in the works. I
I knew
couldn't
that
hold
was
back.
gonna happen.
I know, man.
I was gonna say before you even say it, you got a BDX because you when you were unboxing it, you said it, and I was like, he's gonna get one. He's definitely gonna
Yeah,
get one.
and I've been thinking about it for over a year. So it's funny because when I went to Kentucky Jets the first time, every plane that I saw there, flew there, or liked there, I guess not saw because I saw a lot of planes. Every plane that kind of caught my eye, I've ended up with,
Right.
and the BDX was the last one. So
It's funny, and I'm sure our audience can relate. I know what you went through because you looked at it, you're online, and you're like, "Nah, I can't do this right now. It's not the
yeah,
right time." Then the next day, you went back, you looked at it online again, and you're like, "Nah." And then you started talking yourself into it for a couple of days until finally,
you know it.
it eats away at you. It
Yeah,
like eats
totally.
away at you. Yeah,
And
yeah,
then one
no.
day it's just the switch flicks, and it's like, all right, let's do this.
I've been there with a bunch of planes. And that's the thing. My planes are a lot more affordable, so it's a lot easier to
Yeah,
justify. But
yeah,
I've been there. I've absolutely been there. Yeah, it's crazy. It gets you. It's like
yeah,
you
totally.
gotta do it. You just gotta do it. That's kind of
Yeah.
how long you think you'll until you actually have it in your hands? A couple months.
Yeah, probably a couple of months. I don't. Their production time's pretty good. Like the BDX that is here that I unboxed. I think the owner ordered it in like December-ish, I think. So, it took about a month and a bit to get here.
Yeah.
I think it all depends on their workload and stuff. And then another one, the Razor, that's ordered for another fellow, for David actually. That should be here pretty quick. So it's about a month and a half, 2 months, I think, on a normal turnaround. So if we get everything finalized pretty soon, it should be here by May-ish.
Gotcha.
And then I'll be able to whip it together for probably the maiden at Montana Jets.
So David's getting one too.
He's getting a Razor. So he's got the small BDX, the BDX S, and he's got the new Razor on order. So,
dude, his airplane garage has just got to be like heaven, right? Like,
pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, and a whole bunch of them are here. So,
so your garage has got to be like heaven.
Pretty much. After June, it's like, okay, it's boring and empty in here again, and then it slowly builds up. So
that's funny.
No, we have lots of cool projects though. So it's actually, from, let's just say 2024 is going to be, with the amount of projects we have on the board, it's going to be tons of fun. I'm really looking forward to this year. And already, I mean, we're in halfway through February or more, and it's been pretty cool. We got lots of projects coming. Trying to get a few more done here. We've got like 2.5 weeks now till we leave for Tucson Jets.
Okay.
So there's still the Super Bandit to finish, the Rebel Pro, which hasn't shown up yet, which we need to finish, another Rebel Classic that needs to be built for my friends. So yeah, there's quite a bit to do in the next 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, the BVM came back from paint, right?
Yeah, came back from paint. We're doing some special things on it, like a lot of extra little details, so it's taking a little bit longer, but we should have it done probably by the end of this week, I think.
That's David's BVM too.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. That whoever painted that plane did an amazing job.
Yeah, Jeremy. So Jeremy Ferguson, who's out on the west coast of Canada, he's his company's called LGM Graphics.
Okay.
It might be, no, it's not LMG, it's LGM Graphics. So Jeremy Ferguson, yeah, he's amazing. I have some pictures that he sent me of. He does a lot of motorbike tanks and fenders.
I think I've seen him on Facebook under the RC Air Experience profile.
Yeah, exactly. And like his airbrush work, it is amazing.
Yeah, that plane looks really good.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. So,
hold on, I'm trying to see if I can find him real quick.
Yeah, it's one of the pictures of the tanks that he sent to me, or I think it was a front fender. Had a picture of Jesus on there and some doves, and it looked like an artist painting, and it was all airbrush. It was just amazing, all white, and it was outstanding. So yeah, he does some cool stuff.
Is it LMG Graphics or LGM?
It might be LMG.
I don't know either. I'm trying to...
But it's graphics with an X.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, it was. It took a while, which is the downside. So we're in a bit of a panic mode to get it done now for Tucson, but we'll be able to get it done, and everything will be good with it. So he's actually still got the bypass cover, which he's doing some special details and stuff on. So looking forward to getting that back. Yeah.
When I saw the video when I came back from paint, I was like, wow, that thing looks awesome.
Yeah,
it's a nice job. Yeah.
I've actually had a couple people reach out to me already and ask if it's for sale, and it's not for sale. So yeah,
that's funny. Yeah,
it's a special edition plane. Like basically, Bob Violet. It was one of the last planes he made before he passed away. It's got his signature on the inside, and it's a pretty special plane. So
yeah, I remember Dave was talking about it in the podcast. Yeah, he's not going to let go of that one. That one will be one of his forever planes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how many projects are you currently working on right now that are customers? You got a bunch of them, right?
Well, we've got so many that are just like in limbo. So like the SU-30, which is almost done. We're still waiting on the engines.
Okay.
from Zykoy. So that one's like 95% complete. We have the F14, which I haven't even started on, but we're waiting for engines. But we've got like the F14. I'd love to start it, but it's not important in the queue right now because it needs to be done for June, right?
Right.
So
Right.
the F16 is the same way. So we started on the F16. The F16's been kind of put to the side right now because we got to get these sports jets done before Tucson jets. So
Right. Right.
so yeah,
Right.
there's a bunch in the queue. I mean, I'm working on my T33 when I have time. We're doing the Super Bandit. The Rebel Pro is going to be here soon. The Rebel Classic's here now. Yeah, there's a plane in a crate that showed up the other day that I haven't even uncrated yet. So that's a prop plane. It's a pattern plane
Okay.
from a fellow in Europe. I can't remember the country it came from, but it's Lassie is the guy's name, but I can't remember the name of his company. But it's
Who makes
beautiful too.
who makes the T33 you have?
It's another BVM kit, so it's the amount of work is bonkers. I
Yeah.
was chatting with a guy yesterday, and I think so. This BVM Super Bandit, by the time it's done, we're looking at about 250 hours
Wow.
from start to finish because it was 149 hours to get it ready for paint. Then all of Jeremy's time to paint it, and then my time right now, I'm probably 60% done, and we're at I think 45 to 50 hours. Yeah, it's a lot.
That's crazy. That's a
Yeah,
lot of time. You
yeah,
can
it
almost
is.
build a car. You can almost build a car for that. Like I've built cars in that amount of time.
It's a lot of time. Well, and the thing about it is, like, we take our current ARFs for granted. Um, I take our current ARFs for granted, right?
Right.
I mean, the planes are so easy to assemble now, not build. We can't call them builds because people get their panties out of joint. Um, these old kits, like they were considered ARFs, but there's so much to do on them. Like
Right.
when I on the weekend when I was putting the rudder system together, the vertical stab system together, like you're talking about like 3 to 4 hours to get the mechanism all created and set up
Yeah.
because you're soldering rods together and you're building all the mechanisms and stuff. It's
It's nuts.
bonkers.
So it's funny that you say that, and nowhere near the caliber or level of plane, but I started with my dad when I was younger. We built,
Hmm.
balsa scratch build planes where you sit there at the plans and put the balsa on the plans and,
Yeah,
pin everything and glue it. You know the deal.
yeah.
And then like, I don't know, a year or two ago, I got the hankering for a balsa ARF. It, it was the Bighorn from
Yeah.
OMP, and it didn't survive well with me. It lasted like 2 flights and then it obliterated into like a million pieces. And then I remembered why I don't like balsa planes that much anymore. I still have it, and what I'm thinking about doing is it's really it's like a bare frame with film over it. You know what I mean? It's not like
Yeah.
fully covered. So what I'm
Hmm.
thinking is because it's super light, I'm thinking that for my style of flying, it would be better suited if I actually covered it and then
Yeah.
maybe glassed it and did it that ways and made it a little bit better of a plane. So I haven't gotten rid of it. I stripped the gear, the servos and everything out of it, but my dad was amazed, right? Because remember,
Hmm.
he hasn't done this stuff in
Yeah.
forever. He's been out
Yeah.
of the hobby for forever, and he was amazed when he saw a balsa plane come fully covered, like fully
Yeah.
assembled. Like it's unfathomable to him, right? Because if you think about it, it's
Yeah.
like back then you had to scratch build everything, and now it just comes in a box already made. So
Yeah.
yeah, we absolutely take it for granted,
Yeah.
100%. Because anybody who's ever scratch built a plane, it's time. It is
Yeah.
time. It really
Well,
is.
it's funny from the YouTube perspective too. So the Super Bandit's a bit of a struggle, or actually, my T33 is a bit of a struggle because it's not that popular, right?
Right.
So I put a lot of time in that Super Bandit. The videos take my normal amount of video time, but they're not overly popular videos. Like the Super Bandit videos, they got on average about 5 to 8,000 views per video type thing.
Right.
They slowly go up, but when then I do like a video of the F14 XL, and it might get 30, 40, 50,000 views. So
Right.
it's different. I mean, for me, it's not that's really not the important thing, but it is sometimes that's where I'm putting my focus, right? Like I get people that email me on a regular basis saying, "Hey, here's some video ideas," but
Right.
it doesn't really pay off for me to spend the time to do the video because it's going to be such a small group of people that watch it. So
Right. Right. I have a feeling though, your true fans, yeah, I think a lot of those videos with the bigger jets are people going, wow, look at the size of this jet. But I think
yeah,
your true fans, which I am one of, I think we watch for the detailed work, for the craftsmanship.
for sure.
I think that's kind of what your real fan base, your core fan base, let's call it. I think that's what everybody watches. So so like a video like the BVM, I find fascinating because of all the detail work, because of everything you're doing. But yeah, you're right. I could see the average person who wants to stop by and see a cool jet be like, oh yeah, this is very tedious. I understand that. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So let's get into the next topic, which I want to see what you're feeling or thought about this. So I know we talked about the whole Ramy RC and Tyler Perry thing not too long ago. They just test flew that giant Globemaster they're making, the C-17.
I haven't watched it yet, but
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Did you watch it?
I did. But a couple of videos back, one of Tyler's first videos with Ramy, Tyler's getting away from, he had one of his planes, one of his jumbo planes, his jetliners, is a turbine. And Tyler was kind of explaining how he's getting away from turbines and getting into EDFs. And the C-17 kind of showcases that as well, right? That's a big plane. And I want to get your take on this from a turbine guy, right? I'm an electric guy just because ease of use on electric is it's just amazing. It really is. Compared to where it was 15, 20 years ago with the battery technology and everything we have now, it's just so much better. Do you think there's a point down the road where the EDFs compare to turbines or start replacing them? I mean, they could have easily built that plane with turbines and it would have been really, really cool. And they did that with EDFs. So it's like, I guess the question or the conversation is, at some point, do EDFs start to be able to compete with turbines? Like,
yeah, I think as far as power goes, I think eventually it will get there. It's not there yet.
right.
There is guys, like there's actually a guy, David, in Eastern Canada. I think his last name's Snyder, maybe. Anyways, so he takes some of the larger aircraft. So if you remember the F-14 that I did a couple of years ago for David, not David Snyder, the other David. So he took one of those F-14s, I think. Yeah, it was that, and he did it as EDF.
Okay.
And it works good. There's some considerations there. First of all, you're going to have less power.
Right.
That's the biggest consideration. And I don't know the calculations and stuff, but you need an intake that's a certain size in order not to starve the EDF and whatnot. But your takeoff weight is your landing weight, right?
Right.
So, in our turbine world, that same F-14, if it's taking off at 76 pounds and you're burning 8 pounds of fuel during the flight, you're landing 15 pounds lighter with the fuel powered plane. So there is that difference too.
in layman's terms, if I'm understanding this right, you're getting faster as your flight goes on, or you could be faster as your flight goes on because there's less
Yeah,
weight.
yeah. You're also your power, so your ability to climb is so at the beginning of your flight. I mean, you may be limited in your vertical, but as you
Mhm.
burn off fuel, depending on your engine choice, your power increases. So, and it's substantial, right? Each liter of fuel ish
Right.
weighs about 1.8 pounds. Well, a big plane will carry 8 to 10 liters of fuel and it'll land with two. So you're burning
Right.
off, a significant amount of weight. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, I think eventually it's probably going to catch up with battery technology. And, some of the EDF units from like Schubler,
Yeah.
the carbon fiber units, I mean, they're beautiful. We had one in the shop here last year and it's amazing. They sound awesome.
They really are.
They're expensive.
Yeah, I
So
was
I
just
think,
gonna say that.
I think the price of it, like if you think about a small turbine a small jet with a small turbine, and you buy one of those Schubler fans, the Schubler fans are like seven, eight, $900.
They go up from there. I think there's a
Yeah,
couple you can buy for over 1,000 or 1,500 bucks. They're expensive.
yeah, and then you buy, like if you're running it off 6S, 12S, whatever you're running it off of, the batteries are expensive. So, you know, I think ultimately at the end of the day, it comes down to what really does it for you.
Right.
So for me, EDFs and prop planes don't do anything for me.
Right.
I,
Right. Right.
and the prop plane, when I say that, it's fairly generic. When I fly the Strega
Yeah.
with a Colm engine, that does it for me,
I'm
right?
sure. Yeah.
Because it is next level cool. But when I fly my Yak with a DLE 50, 60, whatever's in there, does nothing for me. It's
Right.
boring.
Right.
I enjoy it, but I don't seek out
It
doing it.
it's not the same as flying one of your
No,
turbines. I get that.
not at all.
100%.
So yeah, so for me, if we think back to 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, most of the helis were nitro.
Right.
And the
Right. And that's
electric
where I'm
stuff was
going with that.
just starting, right? I remember my friend came to the field with a Mikado. I think it was a Mikado electric heli. And obviously he had lipos and stuff back then, but it was pretty cool. It was powerful, but nitro was just cooler. But
Right.
now some of these electric helis, like they're bonkers. There's
Yeah.
so much more power than the nitro stuff, right? So
Yep. And that's where I was thinking about that. Like, if you see the kind of the progression of it, right? Like, you made the perfect example with helicopters, right?
mhm.
Um, and even planes, right? Back in the day, if you wanted a powerful plane, because you had NiCad batteries, you had a gas
Yeah,
plane, but then the battery technology and the ESCs. So, and even if you go back, like helis is a perfect example of where like nitro helis are almost dead. I wouldn't
yeah,
say almost dead, but there's a lot more people buying electric helis than there is nitro helis.
yeah.
Same thing with cars, right? Like, I've had, cars. I had gas cars back in the day. I had some of the gas, first gas Traxxas cars, and they were
hmm
super fast and fun. But now the electric ones are almost just as fast, and you
Yeah,
get almost just as much runtime out of them, right?
yeah.
So it's like,
No
is
slime
that
to clean off, no air filters to
right?
oil, right?
Right. Is that going to start happening eventually? Do you think? Like, I don't know. I could see it possibly happening. There's a lot of considerations, like you said, right? I could only imagine what the setup in that, because Rami uses Schuler ESC EDF like
Yeah,
religiously. Um, I can only imagine what the setup in that thing costs, right? Because he's got 4 EDFs in it, right?
yeah. One of the things that just popped into my head that maybe will limit that transition is, if you think back to nitro engines, the CCs were the determining factor,
Right,
the size of the piston or whatever.
right.
And you really can't change a whole lot. You either put
Mm-mm.
a bigger engine in and that's it, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't know about the details if you could like smooth out the ports and stuff, but it's really you're not
You
gaining much,
could,
right?
but you're not getting a lot out of it.
Yeah. So you compare that to like the turbines. Well, turbines are getting smaller and more powerful
Right.
and
Right.
more fuel efficient. So there's so much more. Um, the turbines are becoming so much more evolved, and I
Yep.
think that's going to keep them current.
Yeah.
I was just so with the Super Bandit that I'm working on now. So the bypass is kind of unique because the BVM bypass, it's kind of like 80% closed, and there's these two mounting ears like this. So
Okay.
the turbine, when you put the turbine in there, it doesn't sit flat like a normal airplane. So normal airplane, you bolt the turbine down to a flat surface. The BVM, you're bolting it to the ears like this.
Okay.
So that bypass in that plane was actually designed for a 120 size engine. Well, the old 120 size engines were this
Huge.
big,
Right.
right? And we're putting a 195, which has whatever, however many percent more power, and it's this big.
Right.
So I actually have to build extensions on the turbine mounts to actually even reach the ears for this little turbine.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so I think
It
that's
is.
going to keep turbines current. Our fuel usage is going down over time. They're becoming more efficient. They're lighter.
More powerful.
They're more powerful. So
Yeah, no, you make a good point. I didn't really think about that part of it, right? Because you're right. With the nitro stuff, how like yeah, you could put I did that to a couple of cars where I changed like the head and got a little bit of an
yeah,
increase, or you change the muffler, you get a little bit of a different increase, or you put a different carburetor, but even then it no replacement for displacement, right?
yeah,
But with turbines, you're right. Turbines are going in a direction where the technology is actually helping turbines a
yeah.
huge amount. So
And they don't
maybe
have to change very much, right? Like, so
no,
Zyko is probably the best example of this. Like, I'm a Sweewind dealer, and Sweewind's pretty level, right? Like
right,
they have this lineup of turbines. They work well. They're pretty small. They're pretty fuel efficient. They run really well. They just run all the time, and they're just kind of stable. Zyko, who I also deal with, um, Gaspar from Zyko, he's just like he's always thinking about stuff, right? But turbines, you could change this tiny little thing on the turbine wheel and it might make all the world of difference. So you look at
right,
their lineup of turbines, they had a 45 which is now a 60. They had an 80 which is now a 95, and who knows, maybe they make a small change and now it's going to be 100.
right.
So you're getting 20% more output compared to what it used to be, and all they did was change one little, a couple little microscopic tweaks on things. So
So I have a great noob question for you then. Turbine size, it's not determined by like the size of the unit. What is it? So what is 90 or 100 or 120? Is that the thrust amount that it's putting out?
yeah, it used to be determined by the size. So
Okay.
you used to have very narrow categories of turbines. You used to have an 80 size fuselage, a
Mm-hmm.
140, a 140, 120 size fuselage, 160. That was what airplanes were based on, right?
Gotcha.
And the turbines were all kind of the same size, and everything kind of fit around that size of turbine. And now it's basically that number doesn't really relate to anything anymore other than the output power of the turbine.
Gotcha.
So when you say it's an easy conversion for us metric people. For you imperial people, not so much. But like so, a
I
200
love
turbo.
metric. All right, I love the metric. I hate the American system. I love everything I do is in metric.
so
Anyways, go
the
ahead.
so the 200 engine, which is 200 newtons, is
Right.
basically 20 kilograms is what it is.
Okay.
And then if
Okay.
you want to make that into pounds, it's times 2.2, right? So 44 pounds of thrust.
So a 200. Go back to that. A 200 is
So 200 is the newtons of the
okay.
turbine. Now you got
Okay.
to remember that changes based on the altitude density.
Okay.
So that's the rated output at 15 degrees Celsius at sea level.
Okay.
As soon as you vary one of those conditions, so if you're at sea level and you're at 0 degrees Celsius, so colder, you're going to get more output. So your 200 Newton turbine might actually put out 210 for the same thing.
I
But if
gotcha.
you're at sea level and you're at 30 degrees, you might get 195 or 190.
So
And then
how
you
does that?
come up in altitude, like for us, 3,300 feet, and even more drop.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask, though. So you're in a higher altitude,
Mm-hmm.
but you're in a colder climate. So
Yeah.
does the coldness offset the altitude? Like,
We can go to the field. So during the summertime, it might be 10 degrees Celsius in the morning overnight, which is pretty typical. So
right,
that's 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So if we go to an event in July and you do your first flight at 9 in the morning and it's 10 degrees Celsius, your plane has a noticeable amount of power increase. Then later that afternoon, when it's 30 degrees Celsius in the afternoon, which is 90-ish, it's a dog. It takes way longer to take off. It's got the air is way less dense. So when you're coming in, it's more sinky. It doesn't float as much. So
gotcha.
I notice it a ton. And when I go to these events closer to sea level, I notice it a way more as well too. Like planes are just more floaty and they have way more power. So
That's pretty interesting. That's
mm-hmm.
it's crazy how the altitude and or the temperature can really affect how much power you're gaining or losing. So that's
Yeah, and there's guys that, like, when I do a turbine test video, there's guys, like, I call them keyboard warriors. They come out of the woodwork and they're like, oh my gosh, this engine's not even performing like it should, and they think they know what they're talking about, but they don't.
right.
When you talk about density altitude, there's a calculation. I don't know anything about it because I'm not a pilot. I just know that it exists, right? So I
Right,
don't know
right,
how to
right,
calculate it.
right.
But when we were doing we were opening for the air show, like the air show in Springbank. This is just before COVID, so like 5 years ago. And so we were doing the pre-show, basically 30 minutes
Right.
before the air show started. We were flying our RC planes, and so we went to the pilots meeting, and the Snowbirds were there, and the F-18 pilots were there. It was super cool to be there. But
Absolutely.
the density altitude of that day, when the air show was supposed to start, was 8,500 feet above sea level.
Wow.
So if you look at the chart, you're getting about a 30% reduction at 8,500 feet. It exists and it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well,
So,
I know from my past in the car world that it was true.
mm-hmm.
It's the altitude affects the motors. It's
Yeah,
thinner air, less
tuning.
right, thinner air, less combustion. Like
Yeah,
it's real in the car world.
yeah,
If you ever watch like any of those car racing channels, they talk about how these NHRA dragsters and stuff have different setups. They have to lean their
yeah,
cars out or make them richer in different climates because of the altitude. So it's actually
yeah.
absolutely. So people have told you it's not real. That's not a real thing.
Yeah, it's nuts. And then you have guys that know it's a real thing, so they'll step in and be like, "What are you talking about? You have no idea what you're talking about." And I just kind of
It's
stay out of it.
absolutely a real thing. It's
Yeah,
100% a real thing. It's a real
yeah.
thing in anything with an engine, not
And
just jets.
it's gone as far. This is a bit of a sidetrack, but it's gone as far as so there's other Sweewind dealers in North America. I've had them reach out to me and say, "Hey, can you like either take down your video or do like some sort of follow-up video?" Because they've had customers contact them and be like, "Hey, I just saw the lighter side of RC's video, and I think it was on the 190 that I tested." And he's like, he tested a 190 and it only produced like 160 newtons or something like that. And like at the beginning of my video, during the video, the end of the video, I preface with people, I'm at 3,300 feet above sea level. This is not going to output what it's supposed to. Like that's
Right,
just the way it is, right?
right,
So
right. That's hilarious.
it's crazy, man. It's such a crazy world.
So I guess that also determines then, like if you're doing a build for a customer and the customer lives in a certain altitude, if
Yeah.
they're talking about doing like a 160 thinking that they're getting a certain power output. Well, you have to go, no, you need to go to a 190 because you're in
Yes.
that
Yeah,
perspective.
it's we always overpower engines. So my BDX, for example, will have a 240.
Okay.
A lot of the guys fly like a King Tech 210 in their BDX.
Right.
The 240 is going to be just like guys at sea level flying the 210.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we always overpower everything at our altitude because it's necessary.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And it makes
I mean,
sense.
sometimes it's fun. Like when you go to sea level and fly with that power, it's fun.
Right,
But
right.
you know, it does. You just have to be more in control of the throttle stick. But
Yeah. But it's definitely something you have to take into consideration when you're, planning out your build. Like,
yeah, well, for sure.
yeah. Yeah. That's wild. I can't believe people have told you that's not real. That's actually pretty
Yeah.
funny.
And then we I think my last flight of 2023 was like middle of November. We had two beautiful weekends in a row, and I went out to the flying field and got like 3 hours of flying in, and it was cold. Like it was like 7-8 degrees Celsius, which is like mid 40s kind of thing in Fahrenheit.
Right.
And the planes were fun because they had so much power, right? It was awesome. So,
Nice cold there. Yeah.
yeah, take
That
off and
makes
just go
sense.
straight up, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
That makes sense. That's like here in the winter, the cars are always a little bit
Yeah,
faster. They used to
yeah,
be.
exactly.
They always start when you first start them up, the cold starts and stuff. They're always a little bit better, a little bit
Yeah,
peppier.
yeah.
Heat soak is real. Yeah, so I think it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what the future has, right? Because companies like Schubler, I was actually even reading about another company. I forgot where I was reading this. I do a lot of reading. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to stuff like that. They were talking about this company has designed like a super efficient EDF that I forgot the name of the company, but they're making all kinds of crazy claims that it's super
Mm-hmm.
super efficient, more power, better efficiency. So it all comes down to a lot of things too. It's the ESCs, the batteries, the cell count of the batteries, internal resistance. There's a lot that goes into play with all that stuff. You could.
Well, and one thing that we didn't even touch on is so we in the turbine world we've got turbo props. Something we really haven't played with is turbo fan setups, right? Where you've got a turbine, a little turbine turning an EDF type fan,
They
as
make
an
those?
example. Yeah, there's a couple videos on YouTube. I forget the guy that was testing them. He was over in I think England, and he had a little Zykoi engine. So the tiny little Zykoi, I think it was the Zykoi one. So the 45, the 4.5
Mhm.
or 4.5 kilogram engine, and he had it set up on a big turbo fan, and I think he was getting like double the output of the engine. It was really cool.
So
So that's something that's possible.
I know turbofans are a real like jet engine design. There's real
Yeah.
jet engine turbofans. I'm
Well,
trying
and
to
it's
think the science behind that.
even like our turboprops, right? So you put a Zykoi 45 turboprop together, spinning a big or a 5 blade prop. You're getting twice the output of that engine as just a standalone turbine because it's spinning a prop. So it's really no different, other than the layout is a little bit different, and you've got like a fan type setup, like an EDF setup.
Yeah, it makes sense. It just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. I'm
It
just
takes
trying
up
to
more
think about it.
space is the downside, but I
Right,
think that
and
the technology is there. So
it my head isn't computing only because I understand you got the turbine and then you got the EDF behind it, and the air is getting rushed by the turbine through to EDF. So you're basically just supercharging the intake flow.
no,
Yeah, I mean,
it's got a connection there, just like our turboprops. So there's no physical connection between the engine and the turboprop or the prop.
mhm.
It's the exhaust gases that are spinning the prop.
I gotta look.
So
I gotta look at one now. Now I have to
yeah,
like.
like a turboprop when it starts, you could hold the prop,
Right.
and the prop will never move. Like you could throttle up and you could hold the prop, but if you let go, it'll start spinning and will spin up because the exhaust gases are spinning the secondary turbine wheel to keep it
Right.
simple.
I gotta watch one of those videos. I'm one of those turbo fans because
Yeah,
that's
it's
wild.
pretty neat.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It'll be.
And then
It'll be fun.
there's also a company called Frank Turbine. I've never seen one. I just know about them. They're heavier, but I'm gonna take a guess here, so I don't know for sure, but I think it's got more stages internally, I believe. So don't quote me on that. But the Frank turbines are leaps and bounds more fuel efficient than any other turbine manufacturer right now.
Wow.
So their engines are a little bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to weigh a little bit more, but that extra weight offsets your fuel you need to carry. So you might have we'll just say a 200 Newton Frank turbine engine that it might only use 2 liters during an 8-minute flight, where normally you'd carry like 5-6 liters for a normal 200 size engine. So that there's lots of different technologies out there.
Yeah. I was thinking about that not too long ago. I wonder, so you can't put FPV on a turbine, but can you put FPV on a turboprop?
Good question.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that would probably be my first thing.
Yeah.
That the only problem is, I tend to stuff things into the ground.
Yeah, that would be an expensive stuff.
Inexpensive stuff, stuffing it into the ground.
And even a prop touch, not a prop strike, a prop touch with a turboprop, it needs to get shipped back and checked
All
over.
kinds of problems, right? It causes all kinds of issues.
Yeah, it just it doesn't take much to throw it out of balance. So
yeah, you built one, right? The Pilatus was a turboprop, right? You built the Pilatus.
Yeah, I've built a couple PC-21s. Well, actually, I built quite a few of them, but the most recent ones on YouTube is the Sebart PC-21, which is a wood kit, and then there's the Skymaster PC-21, which I'm looking at right here. It's so they're fun. They're not my thing again as well too. I don't really enjoy them. I don't think I would ever own one.
Yeah.
But they're kind of cool. I'd own one if it was like a PC-6, where it's kind of a unique type plane.
Right.
But like I would never own a PC-21 or a Tucano or whatever. So
they sound cool, the turboprops.
Yeah, they're interesting.
Yeah. But like you said, if you just wrong kind of landing or something, you have a little bit of a strike on it. It's very fragile, right?
It is, yeah, and it can look like everything's totally fine,
right?
But the engine's now out of balance, and it's just it's a catastrophe waiting to happen. So,
but it's still cool that you can put a turboprop on an RC plane.
Totally.
It's one of those cool technologies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
I would probably go that route. I like props. I'm a prop guy.
Yeah.
I like prop planes. I like warbirds and stuff like that. It's kind of my thing. I love warbirds. I'm a warbird guy.
Yeah.
Although lately, I've been doing a lot more of EDFs. I like the EDFs. I have actually a winter project. I'm doing a full FPV setup, and I'm converting it from 4S to 8S.
Cool.
Actually 6S to 8S. L39 from Motion RC, but I'm putting a full FPV setup in it with a flight controller, hand tilt. Like, it's going to have all the bells and whistles. It's going to be a cool jet.
You say it's a winter project. Winter's quickly running out.
I know. I haven't. I'm very disappointed in myself. Everything I've been doing lately has been about getting the shop off of the ground, so I haven't really been building a lot. I probably have 3 or 4 planes that are halfway built that I need to finish.
Yeah.
And then I have a couple of planes that I want to get built before the winter starts, before the flying season starts. And that L39, that's one of my favorite planes, the L39.
Yeah.
I really want to get that done because it'll be cool to have an EDF that will, 8S with a full setup in it. So one of the cool things about flying FPV and flying in like a jet, we could almost have like an on-screen display,
Yeah.
like a real fighter pilot,
Yeah.
like in the goggles. So like
Oh, okay.
I can have my airspeed, my GPS location. I can have the crosshairs, the horizon crosshairs that go up and
Yeah.
down. Like all of that, I see all that in the display in the goggles. So
Wow.
it's like you're actually flying like a real jet. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
With a HUD, a heads-up display.
with the heads, basically, right? You have a heads-up display, and it's overlapped, it's overlaid on your image inside the goggles.
Huh.
So it'll be cool to have that. And when I do that one, I'll keep the canopy in place, so it's
Yeah.
like you're looking out of a canopy.
Hmm.
You know, it's gonna be cool. It's gonna be a cool
That's pretty
build.
cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be a cool build, and it'll be fun.
L-39 is a good candidate for that too. That's a good flying plane. So
Yeah,
they all are. Every L-39 flies great.
it's a great plane. It's a good looking plane
Hmm.
too. It's a great looking plane. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, the real ones, they're just great looking planes.
Hmm.
So that's one of my winter projects. And then I have a B-25. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to it, but my thought is I have a camera switcher now. I can do up to 3 cameras on a switch. So you can have 3 different camera views on a switch.
Wow.
Right. Through the same flight controller in VTX.
So you could have
So
front, wing, back.
yeah, you can pretty much put them wherever you want. But what I was thinking with the B-25 is doing 3 separate VTXs. So what I want to do is the turret. I want to put a camera with a VTX on the turret. So if somebody is flying along with me,
Yeah.
they could fly out of the turret with the little guns in the view. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and then I want to put another one in one of the side windows with the little gun turret. So you're looking at the
Okay.
side window like you're
Yeah.
in a real B-25, and then one in the front. I'm trying to plan it out. It's crazy because doing one of those builds, it doesn't take like hundreds of hours like you have into a BVM, but
Hmm.
it's still probably 30-40 hours of
Yeah.
laying out all the electronics, testing everything, programming everything. It gets involved. You got to run the
Yeah.
wires. So it's and I go through, even with the foam planes, I have my own little spiel. So like if they have foam hinges, if they don't come with good plastic hinges, I'll put my own hinges in, and I'll change control surfaces and put better servos and stuff
Yeah.
like that in them. Because if you're gonna do it, and it's not about the money, it's about the time you're spending doing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want to have something fail, like,
Of course.
right, regardless if it's it's a high end turbine or if it's a foam plane. If you're gonna spend the time working on it, you don't want something
Yeah.
stupid to fail.
Yeah. Totally.
Right. But yeah, like, so even with the OV10 that's behind me,
Hmm.
that's got a full pan tilt setup on it.
Very cool.
Yeah. I'll pop that off for you real quick. So this has got a full pan tilt setup on it, right? So my camera, there we go. My camera will go left, right, and then it will go up and down, all with a servo.
So I think you've told me this before, but so there's nothing you need to do to control that. All it is if you look up, that looks up.
So it's RC channels. So what you do is it'll plug the controller for this is in your goggles
Hmm.
or mounted to your goggles. It's got like a gyro
Hmm.
on it, basically.
Oh, okay.
And what you do is in your controller, you take 2 channels
Yeah.
and you assign those 2 channels to these 2 servos.
Oh, okay.
You get what I'm
So
saying?
yeah.
So
So then, so if you're flying along, and let's say something goes haywire, or you're like, oh, okay, this is making me ill. You flick a switch and it goes back to front view only. Then
right,
that's all you can see, whether you move your head around or not.
right, right.
Okay.
So I actually set them up so I have both. Um, I do it so I have head tracking, but I also have it on a slider or a knob.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if I don't want to use my head tracking, I can
Yeah.
just manually control it with the knobs.
Oh, okay.
So just in case something does happen with head tracking, because the head tracking is a wire plugged into your remote too, you know, and
Yeah.
I've had situations where I've knocked that wire out by accident, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden your camera's, you know, the
You
worst
can't
thing
exactly search for the wire and plug it back.
No, and the worst thing, and it's happened before. The worst thing you could have happen is your camera's turned completely to the side and down, and now you got to try and land the plane like this, and it's not fun. So yeah, you know, and I 3D print these gimbals and stuff like that.
Huh.
But you know, it's cool because if I could do, you know, like with the OV10, I'm gonna put another camera on the tail.
Yeah.
On that cross mount, so then I'll be able to switch between my camera views.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's neat.
Right, so I can fly with an overview of the entire plane.
Yeah.
And then, or I can fly with the front view on the camera.
Would it while you're landing, would it be beneficial to have an under camera? Would that be kind of helpful or not?
I've been thinking about it, to be honest with you.
Because then you're like, and this is my lack of experience. My thinking was, you know, I'd want to be able to see the ground coming in and control the touchdown, right? So
right. I've been thinking about it. Landing is hard, FPV. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And what I try to do is I try to gauge the best I can, and then kind of like come in a little level, and then I'll just do like a last second tiny little flare, depending on what kind of plane I'm flying. I've been thinking about doing that. I don't think that even with the view, the gauging your distance is still going to be skewed. You get what I'm saying? So while it might help you see the grass a little bit, you're not going to actually be able to, unless you put one watching your gear, like touching the ground. You get what I'm saying? So like, I think I'm almost better having one where I can see the nose of the plane and how it is relative to the ground coming up. It's camera position is really important. It really is. Where you put your camera, flying FPV is important. So now, most people I fly with don't like seeing the plane at all in their camera view.
Okay.
So you got the view of the sky. You're not really seeing it.
Yeah.
I actually like seeing a little bit of my plane in the camera view, because then I can kind of gauge a little bit better where I am and everything else. It all comes down to personal preference.
Yeah.
I've gotten to the point though where, you know, with some of my Cubs and stuff, I can grease a landing FPV. It's, you know, I can do some awesome stuff with it. I don't know about
that's such a wild world to me. Like I don't know if I would be interested in it, but to me it's like, man, that sounds like a challenge.
It's a different perspective. It's a different perspective for sure. Taking off sometimes is hard. You know, if you get a little squirrely, it's harder to kind of take off than it is line of sight, because you're seeing the plane line of sight, so you can correct what's kind of going on. And when you take off FPV, if it goes like that, or you're like in your head, you're like, wait, what's going on? You're not seeing the plane, so you got to kind of like feel it out and correct it that ways.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's I can't fly line of sight anymore.
Yeah. Well, I watched some of these, you know, I watched I wouldn't necessarily call them race drone guys, but some of the guys that fly like in between buildings, and, you know, you see their videos on YouTube where they're going through these old buildings and up and flipping around and coming back down. Like that is, to me, is like, man, you are a good pilot. Yeah. Like that is nuts.
I used to do stuff like that. I have a couple of videos that I want to post from a couple of years ago doing stuff like that. I was looking at them the other day. Yeah, it's fun, dude. It really is. It's a good time. It's a different perspective, you know. It really is. But I think we're gonna wrap up, buddy.
Sounds good, man.
Almost like an hour and a half. Yeah, awesome. Always a great time.
Absolutely.
Let us know what you think of the intro, and community feedback. If you guys want us to cover anything, talk about any specific subject, or if you have a guest that you think we should have on, reach out, please.
Yeah, reach out to us, reach out to them, have people contact us, whatever.
Have their people call our people.
We're interested in talking to not necessarily anybody, but like, I don't know, interesting people.
Yes. People in the industry.
There's so much to learn from people in the industry that I think that's what we're looking for. So
yeah. It'd be cool if we can get a couple professional pilots on, talk about their experiences.
Guys, like full scale you're talking about?
No, like
RC stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll just put it out there and we'll see how things pan out.
Yeah. That'd be cool. Get a perspective of a guy that, like a true professional, someone who gets paid to travel around flying planes for a living. I don't know if that, I don't know, do those people exist? I mean, they have to, right?
Yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah. It's just not us. We're not that lucky.
I'm not that good of a pilot, so that's really it.
Yeah. Neither am I. I crash a lot. Oh, my call sign. Crash is my call sign. Anyways, have a good night, buddy.
Thanks, Anthony. You too.
All right. Thanks, everybody.